Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. I hope you're okay wherever you are and whatever you may be doing. I am Mayat Taloza-Valdez, and my task is to discuss to you behaviorism and cognitivism and their implications to teaching. What are our roles as teachers, and what are the implications of this behaviorism and cognitivism to our teaching? So let's talk about the behavioral and cognitive development theories of learning. Behaviorism was developed as a result of the critique of the previous theory, which is introspection. This introspection has been introduced by Wilhelm Wundt, and it was known as experimental self-observation, where this technique involved training people to analyze carefully and objectively as possible themselves. However, as objective as possible, the result came to be so subjective, so that that became the biggest critic of introspection. So, behaviorist perspective has been introduced, and the behaviorism or behaviorist perspective has been classified into two. We have the behaviorism and the neo-behaviorism. The neo-behaviorism included Tolman and Bandura, while behaviorism included Pavlov and Watson, Thorndike, Skinner. Let's have first the theories of behaviorism. First, we have that of Pavlov and Watson, which is classical conditioning. What is classical conditioning? Classical conditioning is focused on how we condition the mind to respond to stimulus. Example here, the experiment of Pavlov included a dog and a bone. As we can see here, the, the dog is presented with a bone and there is a salivation. And then on the second picture, the dog is presented with a bell, and the result is that there is no salivation here. And then on the third, the dog is presented with a bone and a bell. And as expected, there is the bone, there is salivation. On the fourth, the dog is only presented with a bell. However, there is already conditioning, which is salivation. So whenever the dog is presented with a bell, the dog is conditioned that the bell is with a bone, so it salivates. Now, what is the implication to teaching? Teachers are responsible to condition the minds of the learners of what they can and cannot do. We condition our learners' mind by what we let them see, what we let them feel, what we let them taste, what we let them hear, and what we let them smell. Next, we have Next, we have that of Thorndike, which is connectionism. What is connectionism? In connectionism, the stimulus and response connection is strengthened because an outside force affects the response. Example here, the sister or the mother here tells the kid that ice cream is delicious. So here the girl is saying it's so yummy. Okay, so the kid is excited to buy and eat the ice cream. So what is the implication to teaching? We must be selective of our motivating agents. We must always be reminded of the other laws of learning. Example, law of readiness. What does it say? Law of readiness states that a learner learns when he or she is ready. Like in here, the cat will eat or will open the cage when it is hungry. Another, the law of exercise. Oh, I noticed more. I repeat opening the cage more easily and quickly. I can open it next time. So, if a task has been done repeatedly and so it is exercised, there is a saying that goes, um, Practice makes perfect, which goes with the law of exercise. What else? The law of effect. Every time I open the cage, I get to eat the yummy fish, so I'm gonna repeat it often. So, law of effect. What is the effect of the cat's opening the cage? It it gets to eat the fish. So, it repeats the action of opening the cage. That is the implication to teaching. We must be selective of our motivating agents in order for us to condition um, the connection between the stimulus and response. Next, we have that of Skinner, which is operant conditioning. What is operant conditioning? Operant conditioning is based on the idea that we can increase or decrease a certain behavior by adding a consequence. For example, if a dog poops on the carpet, we can either provide reinforcement so the dog does it again. Here, there is a poop over here. We can provide reinforcement so the dog does it again, or punishment so the dog stops. Both reinforcement and punishment can either be positive or negative, which means we have 4 possible ways to teach this dog a lesson. We can draw the 4 options in table. In positive reinforcement here, positive reinforcement, we add something pleasant like a cookie, or we may pat the dog and increase the likelihood of the behavior if we want to repeat it pooping on the carpet, which of course we do not want. If reinforcement is negative, however, here, negative reinforcement, we still want to increase the desired behavior, but this time by removing something unpleasant, which is, for example, we are removing the dog's leash here. Leash, I mean. In positive punishments, we add an unpleasant response to decrease the behavior, like striking or hitting the dog. When punishment is negative in here, we also want to decrease the behavior now by removing something that is comfortable to the dog, like the comfy carpet. If we stop any sort of manipulation, the conditioned behavior will eventually disappear again. This is called extinction of behavior. Now, what is its implication to teaching? We teachers should know what kind of reinforcement or punishment we should be meeting our students with in order for them to be conditioned to learn. Next, we talk about NeoBehaviorism. First, we have that of Tolman, which is purposive behaviorism. What is purposive behaviorism? Tolman believed that learning is a cognitive process and that it is always purposive and goal-directed. In the picture, rats are experimented on how they will be able to get out of the maze. Some developed goal-directedness. Goal-directedness is that they are able to get out of the maze because there is a goal. They are directed by a goal. What else? Some were able to get out because of their goal. Some, however, have developed cognitive maps, like when we develop strategies in gaming when it is our first time to be playing a game. Some have had the resurface of the latent learning they had, or the learning that has been hidden in the mind, and it's only manifested when needed. And lastly, some have been given intervention like food to motivate them to find their way out. Now, what is the implication, or what is this theory's implication to teaching? Learners, we must be reminded, teachers, that learners differ in learning styles. We must vary our strategies and assessment methods because some have developed their cognitive maps naturally, some are directed by their goals, and some have latent learning, and others have ang tawag nito, needs motivation in order to get out. Next, we have that of Bandura, which is social learning theory. Social learning theory stresses the importance of modeling. There is an adage that goes, what they see us do, whether right or wrong to them, adults do everything right. Or in Tagalog, mali man ang iyong gawa, sa mata ng bata, nagiging tama. Social learning theory goes with the example of Bandura. There is an experiment of showing an inflated doll to a set of kids. The kids have been grouped into Group A and Group B. The Group A has been showed violence against the inflated doll. The doll has been punched, has been kicked, has been hit in front of these Set A students. However, the Set B students have been shown nothing but the inflated doll. They did nothing to the inflated doll. And when Set A students were put in a room, they have imitated what the model has done to the inflated doll. The kids kicked, hit the inflated doll. Set B, however, did nothing to the inflated doll. They have just stared on the inflated doll and some touched it, played with it. So this goes, it is safe to conclude that what they see, they imitate. Now, what is this? What is its implication to teaching? We must be the epitome of whatever we want our learners to show and do. What we want them to do, we must model. Next, we have the behaviorist perspective in planning and assessment. First one, we can condition the minds of our learners to fail or succeed. What does this mean? In telling the expected outcomes of our learners, we are already conditioning them to succeed or to fail. In introducing the lesson alone, we are already conditioning them to feel that what they do will be so hard or so easy. Number 2, be careful of what kind of motivation to use. What does this mean? While motivation can help learners manifest the desired behavior, being too dependent with motivation may be a factor on the learners becoming corrupt. So, what kind of motivation are we providing our students? Be careful with adding the pluses or the additional points, because that may be creating future corrupt officials when they are, well, they may be in politics, they may serve, and we may be breeding a breed of corrupts. So we must be very careful. Number 3, the behavior is an end. What does this mean? The ultimate goal of teaching is to change the behavior of the learner into the desired prescribed behavior. The learner will not know what is good and what is not if she is not told or taught what is. So, number 4, consider individual differences. In Bronfenbrenner's socio-ecological theory, it states that every child is different because they came from different backgrounds, which defines who they are. There are children who may prefer disciplinarian teaching, while there may be some who prefer authoritarian, or vice versa. So, the point is, we must consider their individual differences. And number 5, teachers are the epitome of the behavior. We cannot go on prescribing something or prescribing a behavior without showing our learners the expected behavior that they should manifest. And finally, for a desired behavior to become a behavior, there is a need for practice and practice. Like what Thorndike's law of exercise tells, a behavior is only called a behavior when it is already done very naturally. Now, what is the teacher's role? What is the teacher's role in behaviorism? We must provide stimulus so students display the expected behavior. Provided stimulus, remember, equals expected behavior. If we do not provide the right stimulus, we do not have the right the expected behavior, the desired behavior. So that is for behaviorism. We move on to cognitive theories. In cognitive theories, we will be discussing about Piaget's cognitive development, Gestalt Psychology, information processing theory, Gagne's conditions of learning, meaningful verbal learning, Constructivist theory, and Bloom's taxonomy of educational objectives. Now, what is cognitive learning? Cognitive learning theory grew out of behaviorism. Behaviorism did not explain language learning, which is believed to be the foundation of all learning, the learning of language. Cognitivists claim that people do not have the same responses to stimulus. Thus, cognitivism, learning theories focused on processes. Now, let's have one by one the cognitive theories. First with Piaget's cognitive development. Piaget believed that children take an active role in the learning process, acting much like little scientists as they perform experiments, make observations, and learn about the world. As kids interact with the world around them, they continually add new knowledge, build upon existing knowledge, and adapt previously held ideas to accommodate new information. So what is the implication to teaching? While there are some students who are advanced, we still need to consider that each learner undergoes a stage of cognitive development. We must not judge learners. Their present state is not an end, is not the end. Let's be reminded that we are still all in the process of development. Next, we have that of Gestalt Psychology. Gestalt Psychology has been introduced by Max Wertheimer, Wolfgang Kohler, and Kurt Kofka. Gestalt Psychology are principles that determine how people naturally perceive visual elements. According to these three theorists, the learners or the perceivers are not passive but rather active. Learners do not just collect information, but they actually process and restructure data in order to understand it. They see how the data are connected to each other, how near are the data to each other, how related are the information with each other, and they process the meaning out of their organization of thoughts. Now, what is its implication to teaching? In the mind is an endless connection and reconnection of ideas. As teachers, we must see to it that we are open to our learners' unique way of learning. Again, we must be open to our learners' unique way of learning. Next, we have that of information processing theory. In information processing theory, we are reminded of the types of knowledge, which are declarative, procedural, episodic, conditional. And we also have the stages of information processing theory. We have encoding, how the information is encoded in the mind, how it is stored in the mind, and how the information is retrieved whenever we need the information. What else? We are reminded of the sensory register, that when we hear an information or when we listen to an information, within 1 to 3 seconds, our senses register the information. For example, we taste something, in 1 to 3 seconds, the information is processed in the brain. Of course, we are also reminded of the short-term and long-term memories. In short-term memory, the short-term memory accepts only 5 to 9 chunks of information for the duration of 18 seconds. And of course, for the long-term memory, the duration is indefinite and the capacity is unlimited. Of course, we are also reminded of forgetting, or the inability to retrieve an information when needed. So, what is this information processing theory's implication to teaching? The brain, when stimulated, may work wonders. Teachers need to design engaging activities and tasks to cultivate the infinite, unlimited capacity of the brain. Next, we have that of Robert Gagne's conditions of learning. Oops. Gagne stressed the importance of attention because attention is the basis of everything to be done. Let us see in here, in the picture, is Gagne's 9 events of instruction. This is very important. The first event is very important because this tells the gaining of attention of the learners. When Gagne says that when we fail to gain the attention of our learners, we are failing in all these other 9 events. There is, it's as if when we fail in number 1, there will already be no sense doing the 8 other events of instruction. So what is the implication to teaching? Motivation is king. To set the tone of the whole class period, it is very important that learners are motivated and attentive of whatever the teacher wants them to accomplish. Next, we have meaningful verbal learning of David Ausubel. Meaningful verbal learning of David Ausubel stresses that the most important factor influencing learner is the quantity, the clarity, and the organization of learners' present knowledge. What is the implication to teaching of David Ausubel's meaningful verbal learning? Learners learn best when the examples, situations, and characters used in the learning teaching process are contextualized, meaning related or relative to the locality of the learners. They are familiar to something that the learners already possess. The materials used should be practical to the learners. That is what David Ausubel said. When the teaching and learning, the situations used are contextualized, the more that there is learning. Next, we have Constructivism. Constructivism by Jerome Bruner. Constructivism talks about the connection of learners' previous knowledge plus their present knowledge and what they can construct out of the combination of the two. What is this? What is the implication to teaching? Our knowledge of who our students are cannot be taken lightly. When we know how full or how dearth our learners' knowledge bank is, we know where to start. We are provided with the basis on where to continue engaging the learners. Next, we have the Taxonomy of Educational Objectives by Benjamin Bloom. In the picture, we see the revised Benjamin Bloom's Taxonomy of Learning Objectives. Of course, we all know that this has been revised by David Krathwohl and Lauren Anderson, the students of Benjamin Bloom, from knowledge, kay kaase, we call that before. It became ruwaaek. Ruwaaek is what is our acronym for this. What does this mean? What does this mean? The implication to teaching, we need to apply smart teaching, which means that our objectives, since we are talking about objectives here, our objectives must be smart, which means that they must be specific, they must be measurable, they must be attainable, they must be results oriented, and they must be time bound. Now, what is our teacher's role in cognitivism? Our teacher's role is to provide the right environment for the learners to cultivate their bank of knowledge, thus opening the door to learning. Let us see here the highlighted parts of the teacher's role. Provide the right environment. Provide the right environment for learners to cultivate their bank of knowledge. If we provide the right environment, the learners will be able to cultivate their bank of knowledge. If they cultivate their bank of knowledge, we are helping them open the door to learning. Next, what is the take-home message for this lesson, Behaviorism and Cognitivism? Behaviorism talks about the product, while Cognitivism talks about the process. What does this mean? It keeps on popping. There are two questions I would like you to answer. Are we providing the right stimulus? For behaviorism, are we providing the right stimulus? So we are stimulating the right behavior. What else? Are we preparing the right environment? Do we have the materials, the strategies, and the equipment for students to activate their cognition? Thank you for listening. Good night, good afternoon, and good morning.